There's a version of you that never got to exist. Not a fantasy. Not a better fictional you. The actual person you would have become if fear hadn't made half your decisions for you. You've felt her or him before in flashes. The confidence that shows up for exactly one moment before you talk yourself out of it. The idea you almost pursued. The conversation you almost had. The version of you that almost spoke up, almost left, almost tried, and then didn't. That's not weakness. That's a person who's been waiting a long time to be let out. And most people spend their whole lives managing that waiting instead of ending it. Quieting the part of them that knows exactly who they could be, because listening to it feels too dangerous. In the last 2 episodes, we talked about rebuilding the structure of your life and rebuilding your relationship with the God you're building it for. Today we talk about the person the whole rebuild is actually for, because a beautifully rebuilt house is worthless if the person meant to live in it never moves in. So today we go looking for her, for him, the version of you that's been waiting, sometimes patiently, sometimes not, for you to finally stop building around them and start building toward them. This might be the most personal episode of the season, because it isn't really about circumstances or beliefs. It's about you specifically, the exact places where you've quietly settled for less than what you sense is possible, and the reasons that felt like the safer choice at the time. Nothing here is meant to shame those choices. Most of them were survival. But survival mode was never meant to be a permanent address. The person you almost became. Think back to a moment. You probably already have one in mind, where you almost did the brave thing. You almost said what you actually felt. You almost applied. You almost walked away, and then something quieter and more familiar took over, and you didn't. That moment didn't disappear. It's still in you, filed somewhere, still asking the same question it asked then. Most people carry dozens of these moments stacked over years, each one a small door that almost opened. Here's what nobody tells you about those moments. They weren't failures. They were previews. A glimpse of a version of you that exists on the other side of the fear you keep choosing instead. That preview doesn't go away just because you didn't walk through the door. It waits. The tragedy isn't that you have fear. Everyone does. The tragedy is mistaking the fear for the truth about who you are, believing the person who hesitated is the real you. And the person who almost didn't hesitate was some unrealistic fantasy. It was the opposite. The fantasy is the smaller life you've convinced yourself is the safe one. The person who almost said it, almost did it, almost became it, that one was real. She's still there. He's still there, waiting for you to stop, mistaking hesitation for identity. It helps to think of this the way you'd think of a skill you stopped practicing. A person who used to play an instrument still has the muscle memory in their hands, even after years away from it. Rusty, maybe, but not gone. The version of you that almost spoke up isn't a stranger. You'd need to invent from nothing. She's someone you already have muscle memory for. You've just stopped practicing her. Self-sabotage has a job. If you've ever wondered why you keep getting in your own way right when things start going well, here's the truth. Almost nobody explains clearly. Self-sabotage isn't random. It has a job. Its job is to keep you safe, using the only definition of safety it's ever known. Somewhere along the way, a failure that hurt more than it should have, a moment you were humiliated for trying, a version of you that got hurt for taking up space. You learned that going further than a certain point wasn't safe. So a part of you built an alarm system, and every time you get close to becoming that waiting version of yourself, the alarm goes off. That's what self-sabotage actually is. Not a character flaw, a well-intentioned bodyguard using outdated information. It's still protecting you from a threat that isn't there anymore, using a strategy that made sense once and now just keeps you small. This reframe matters because you can't out-discipline a bodyguard doing its job. You can't shame it into standing down either. You have to update the information it's working from. It needs proof over time that the version of you it's protecting is allowed to exist now, that the room is safe enough for her to finally walk in. That proof isn't a single dramatic moment. It's dozens of small ones, trying the thing and surviving it, saying the True thing and not being destroyed by the consequences. Each one quietly retrains the alarm system to stop sounding for a threat that expired years ago. Be patient with how long this retraining takes. An alarm system built over 20 years of evidence doesn't get rewired by one good week. It gets rewired by a pattern, enough small proofs, repeated consistently, that eventually outweigh the old ones. Some days the alarm will still go off, even when you know logically there's no real danger. That's not a setback. That's just what retraining an old system actually looks like from the inside. Some people find it useful to actually name their alarm system, almost like naming the part of them that's trying to protect them. Not to indulge it, but to recognize it clearly enough to talk back to it. I see you. I know why you're doing this. But this isn't the same threat anymore. That single act of naming it often takes some of its power away. The comfort of staying small. Nobody wants to admit this part, but it needs to be said plainly. Staying small is comfortable, and comfort is genuinely hard to give up. The smaller version of you doesn't get rejected because she doesn't ask for much. He doesn't fail publicly because he doesn't try publicly. There's a strange, quiet safety in never finding out what you're actually capable of. As long as the bigger version of you stays hypothetical, she can never disappoint you. He can never fall short. Potential feels safer than proof, because potential can't be measured against reality. But that safety has a cost. Most people don't calculate until years later. Every year you stay small is a year that version of you doesn't get to exist. Not paused. Not stored somewhere waiting patiently forever. Genuinely not lived. Time doesn't wait for you to feel ready. This isn't meant to scare you into rushing. It's meant to be honest about the actual trade you're making every time. You choose the comfortable smaller life over the uncertain bigger one. Comfort now, or a shot at becoming who you actually are. Both are real costs. Only one of them compounds in your favor. The version of you that's waiting isn't asking for recklessness. She's asking for one honest inventory. What has staying small actually protected you from? And was it worth what it's cost you to keep protecting it? Answer that question as specifically as you can. Not everything, that's too vague to work with. Name the actual thing. The relationship you didn't pursue. The role you didn't apply for. The truth you didn't say out loud. Specificity turns a vague, heavy regret into something concrete enough to finally do something about. Who told you that about yourself? A lot of what keeps that waiting version of you locked away isn't even something you decided. It's something you were told once by someone whose opinion mattered too much at the time. A teacher, a parent, fancying someone who said directly or through their reaction that this part of you was too much or not enough. You believed them because you were young enough or hurt enough not to question it, and that belief calcified into something you now mistake for self-knowledge. Instead of what it actually was, one person's limited, sometimes wounded opinion, spoken at exactly the wrong moment. It's worth asking, honestly, who told you that about yourself, and were they actually qualified to? Was the person who called you too sensitive someone who valued sensitivity? Was the person who called your dream unrealistic someone who had ever attempted anything similar themselves? Most limiting beliefs don't survive this question intact. They were never evidence. They were someone else's fear, their own unlived version of themselves, projected onto you at a moment you didn't yet have the tools to push back. The version of you that's waiting was never actually disproven. She was just told convincingly enough by someone, unqualified to say it, that she didn't get to exist. It's not too late to reopen that verdict. Reopening it doesn't mean blaming that person forever, or pretending the comment never mattered. It means finally separating what actually happened, one person, one moment, one opinion, and from the much bigger conclusion you built on top of it. A single sentence, spoken by someone limited and sometimes hurting themselves, was never supposed to carry the weight of an entire identity. The gap between who you are and who you could be, there's a specific kind of ache that comes from sensing a gap between the life you're living and the life you know. Somewhere underneath, you're capable of. That ache isn't a flaw in you, it's information. It's the waiting version of you still knocking. Most people try to close that gap, by numbing the ache instead of listening to it. More distraction, more scrolling, more nights that blur into each other, so the gap gets quieter. It works temporarily. The ache always comes back, louder, because numbing never actually closes a gap, it just delays the reckoning. The other option is harder and far more effective. Let the ache tell you exactly where the gap is, instead of drowning it out. What specifically does that waiting version of you have that you don't currently practice? More honesty, more risk, more rest, more faith? Once you can name the gap specifically, it stops being a vague, overwhelming feeling and becomes something far more workable, a direction. Not a cliff to leap off, a series of steps. The same way every rebuild in this season has been a series of steps, not a single leap. The gap isn't proof you're behind. It's proof there's still someone waiting on the other side of it, worth the walk. It also helps to remember that the gap isn't fixed. It doesn't stay the same width forever, no matter what you do. Every honest step toward the waiting version of you narrows it slightly. Every year spent numbing it instead tends to widen it. The gap responds to what you actually do, not just to how long you've been aware of it. This is, in a strange way, hopeful. It means the gap isn't a permanent verdict about who you are. It's more like a distance that changes based on direction of travel. You've probably already narrowed it without noticing, in moments you didn't think counted. A hard conversation you finally had, a boundary you finally held. Those counted more than you realized. Grief for the person you never became. Before you can build toward this waiting version of yourself, there's something most people skip that actually needs to happen first. Grieving the years you spent as someone smaller than you were capable of being. That might sound dramatic for what looks from the outside like an ordinary life, but grief isn't reserved for death. It's the appropriate response to loss of any kind, including the quiet loss of years spent protecting yourself from a life you were actually capable of living. Skipping this grief doesn't make you more resilient. It usually just means the grief shows up later, uninvited, disguised as anger or numbness, or a sudden collapse that seems to come from nowhere. Better to feel it honestly now than to have it ambush you later. This isn't about drowning in regret over time you can't get back. It's a brief, honest acknowledgement. Something real was lost in those years of staying small, and it deserves to be named instead of minimized. Naming it is often what finally frees you to stop repeating it. Grieve it. Then let the grief do what grief is actually for, clearing enough space for something new to be built, where the old loss used to sit. Give this a real moment, not just a passing thought while you keep scrolling. Sit with what those years actually cost. A relationship you avoided, a version of confidence you never practiced, a decade of quietly assuming you weren't capable of something you likely were. Let it hurt honestly for a moment, then let it go on purpose instead of carrying it forward disguised as caution. Meeting her halfway. Here's the part that surprises people. You don't meet the waiting version of yourself by transforming overnight into someone unrecognizable. You meet her halfway, one decision at a time, moving slightly closer to the person you sense underneath everything. This looks smaller than people expect. Saying the honest thing in a conversation where you'd normally stay quiet. Applying for the thing you'd normally talk yourself out of. Setting the boundary you've rehearsed in your head 50 times but never said out loud. Each of these is a small handshake with the person who's been waiting. Not a grand reunion, a handshake. And handshakes, repeated enough times, eventually become a relationship the same way. You'd build trust with any person you were slowly getting to know. Some days this will feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because you're practicing a version of yourself with less practice than the smaller, safer one. That discomfort isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's the exact sensation of a muscle that hasn't been used in years finally being asked to work again. Keep meeting her halfway. Eventually, halfway stops being a stretch and starts being who you actually are. Track these handshakes, even the small ones, because it's easy to forget how far you've come when each step felt so incremental at the time. Look back after a month of consistently meeting her halfway, and you'll likely find you're no longer the same person who started this episode, not because of one leap, because of a dozen quiet handshakes nobody else even noticed happening. This is also why comparing your rebuild to Someone else's highlight reel rarely helps. Their dozen handshakes happened off camera too. What you're seeing is the result, not the process. The same way this whole season has quietly insisted that every visible result is built from invisible, unglamorous repetition. She doesn't need rescuing, she needs building toward. It's tempting to treat this waiting version of you like a rescue mission, someone trapped, someone you need to save in one dramatic gesture. But she was never trapped, she was patient. There's a difference, and it changes how you approach this. A rescue implies urgency, crisis, a single decisive act. But building, which is what this actually is, which implies steadiness, small consistent decisions stacked over time, the same brick-by-brick process this entire season has been. About since episode 1, you don't need a single dramatic transformation to meet her. You need the same daily decision to lay one honest brick applied here toward becoming who you already sense you are. That's not less impressive than a dramatic rescue. It's more durable. The version of you that's waiting isn't asking you to become someone new by tomorrow. She's asking you to stop building your life around her absence and start building it toward her presence. One decision, one honest choice, one small act of courage at a time. She's not impatient. She's been waiting this long already. She just needs to know you're finally building in her direction. So let this be the moment that shifts quietly, without needing an audience to witness it. Not a dramatic reinvention, announced to everyone you know, just a private decision made today to stop treating her like a fantasy and start treating her like a construction project already underway, one you fully intend to finish. You won't finish it today. You weren't meant to. But today can still be the day the direction changes from building around her to building toward her. That single shift in direction is worth more than any amount of time spent standing still, no matter how long the wait has already been. If you felt that waiting version of yourself in this episode, subscribe. Next week, we talk about why nobody's coming to build this for you but you. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing the waiting version of you would do today that the current version keeps avoiding? Never forget, you're stronger than you think. Before you go, next episode gets uncomfortable on purpose, because meeting the version of you that's waiting is one thing. Actually building toward her without waiting for someone else to do it for you is a different kind of hard. Next episode, nobody's coming to save you. I'll see you in the next chapter.